Unfortunately, this type of shit happens every single game to her, and the league and the refs do absolutely nothing about it.
That's the problem right there.
The WNBA's leadership has a Caitlin Clark problem. Not the kind they can spin, not the kind they can bury in a press release or paper over with a one-game suspension that nobody asked for and everybody laughed at. A real, documented, undeniable problem, where the most transformative player this league has ever seen gets cheap-shotted, elbowed, targeted, and physically assaulted on a near-nightly basis, and the people running this operation do absolutely nothing. Nothing. And now Sophie Cunningham, on her own podcast with her own voice with zero filter, has said out loud what every single person watching this league already knows in their bones. Caitlin Clark is being targeted. The refs see it and do nothing. And Kathy Engelbert, the commissioner of the Women's National Basketball Association, is nowhere to be found. Welcome back. This is Room Run, and today we are ripping the doors completely off the WNBA's protection racket. The deliberate, baffling, institutional failure to protect the most important player in the history of this league.
I was like, now, Caitlin got one, but why didn't she get one? Because if Caitlin's gonna get one, then she should have got one.
Let me be entirely clear with you about why this moment matters so much. This is not just another incident. This is not just another flagrant foul that gets reviewed and downgraded and forgotten by Monday morning. What happened to Caitlin Clark at the hands of Alyssa Thomas and the Phoenix Mercury is the logical endpoint of a pattern that has been building since the moment Clark stepped onto a WNBA court. A pattern of deliberate physical targeting. A pattern of referees swallowing their whistles. A pattern of league leadership that has consistently, catastrophically, and inexcusably looked the other way while their golden goose gets battered game after game after game. And here is what makes this specific moment so significant. The person speaking up is not a fan, not a pundit, not a talking head on a sports radio show. It is Sophie Cunningham, a current active WNBA player, a teammate of Caitlin Clark's, a woman who is inside that locker room, inside those huddles, inside the competitive fire of this league every single day. When Sophie Cunningham goes on her podcast and unloads about what is happening to Caitlin Clark, that is an insider blowing the whistle. That is someone with first-hand knowledge drawing a line in the sand. And every single person watching this video needs to understand the weight of that.
It's like, it is like she's jealous of her, or like thinks that like because she's a bigger face than her or like anyone the WNBA's had, that she like won't give her the platform. It's fucking.
So let us walk through exactly what Sophie Cunningham said, because the details matter enormously here. She was on her podcast when the conversation turned to the Alyssa Thomas incident, the elbow, the targeting, the brutal physical assault on Clark that set social media on fire. And Sophie's first admission was stunning in its honesty. She said that during the game, in real time, she did not see the hit happen. None of her teammates saw it happen. And she made a promise, a direct personal promise, that if they had seen it, they would have had Caitlin's back. They would have had her back. Let that sink in for a second. A teammate of Caitlin Clark's is going on the record to say that the support system around her is real, that the protection instinct is there among the players. But the incident happened in a blind spot, in a moment nobody caught in real time. That is the first devastating detail. Not because it condemns Sophie or the Fever players, quite the opposite. It reveals something far more damning about the structure of what is happening to Caitlin Clark. The targeting is happening in the gaps, in the moments between whistles, in the spaces where the refs are already looking elsewhere. This is not random. This is not accidental. This is deliberate, surgical targeting, the kind that sophisticated bad actors execute precisely because they know the officials are not watching closely enough. And then Sophie said the thing that should be playing on a loop on every sports broadcast in this country. She said that this type of thing happens every single game to Caitlin Clark. Every single game. And the league and the refs do absolutely nothing about it. Do nothing. Turn a blind eye. Act like they do not even see it. Do not take my word for it. Here is Sophie Cunningham saying it herself, on her own podcast, with cameras rolling.
Unfortunately, this type of shit happens every single game to her, and the league and the refs do absolutely nothing about it.
That's the problem right there.
She said it, on her own podcast, with full clarity and zero hesitation. This type of thing happens every single game to Caitlin Clark, and the league and the refs do absolutely nothing about it. That is not a hot take. That is not a frustrated fan venting on social media. That is an active WNBA player, a teammate, a woman with inside knowledge, making a direct, specific, documented accusation against the officiating structure of her own league. There is no spin to put on that. There is no press release that walks that back. Sophie Cunningham said it, she meant it, and the tape does not lie. Now let us talk about the suspension. Because the WNBA's response to the Alyssa Thomas incident is almost as outrageous as the incident itself. One game, one single game. That is what the league handed down as punishment for a deliberate on-camera, undeniable physical assault on the most watched player in the history of this organization. One game. Sophie Cunningham's response to that number was immediate and direct. She said that girl should have been suspended for 5 to 7 games minimum, and she is absolutely right. 5 to 7 games minimum. That is the standard that should apply when you cheap shot a player in the throat on national television. One game is not a punishment. One game is a statement, and the statement it makes is this: we do not take the physical safety of Caitlin Clark seriously, not even a little bit. Think about what a one-game suspension actually communicates to every other player in this league. It communicates that the cost of targeting Caitlin Clark is essentially zero. It communicates that you can elbow her, grab her, shove her, cheap shot her, and the worst-case scenario is you miss one game. One game. That is the price the WNBA has put on Caitlin Clark's physical safety, and that price is an absolute disgrace.
I was like, now, Caitlin got one, but why didn't she get one? Because if Caitlin's going to get one, then she should have got one.
Now let us talk about Cathy Engelbert. Because Cathy Engelbert is the primary villain of this story, and I want every single person watching this video to understand exactly why. Cathy Engelbert is the commissioner of the WNBA. Her job, her singular most important job, is to protect the integrity of this league and the safety of its players. That is it. That is the whole job. And on both counts, when it comes to Caitlin Clark, Cathy Engelbert has failed so completely, so catastrophically, so bafflingly, that the failure itself has become the story. Sophie Cunningham called her out by name on her podcast. She asked, "Where is Cathy Engelbert?" She noted that Engelbert has essentially been invisible, hiding, as Sophie put it, since the collective bargaining agreement got done, while her most important player gets physically abused on a nightly basis. Where is Cathy Engelbert? That is the question. That is the only question that matters right now in the context of this league. Because when your most marketable player, your most watched player, the woman who single-handedly dragged this league into a new era of mainstream relevance, is getting cheap-shotted in the throat and elbowed in the head and physically targeted every single night, and your response as commissioner is to hand down a one-game suspension and then disappear back under whatever rock you crawled out from. You have failed at your job. You have failed this league. You have failed Caitlin Clark. And you have failed every fan who tuned in because of her. Cathy Engelbert's name is being dragged across social media right now, and it should be. It absolutely should be. Because the people who run this league have made a series of decisions. Deliberate, documented, undeniable decisions that have consistently failed to protect and promote their most valuable asset. And that is not an accident. That is a choice.
It's like, it is like she's jealous of her, or like thinks that like because she's a bigger face than her or like anyone the WNBA's had, that she like won't give her the platform. It's fucking.
Let us now talk about the 30-year commemorative poster. Because if the physical targeting of Caitlin Clark is the active, ongoing crime, then the poster situation is the smoking gun that proves the institutional contempt is not limited to the refs and the officiating structure. It runs all the way up to the league's marketing operation and the commissioner's office itself. The WNBA dropped a 30-year commemorative poster, a celebration of the league's history, a visual statement about who matters, who built this, who defines this organization. And Caitlin Clark, the woman who has done more for the visibility, the ratings, the attendance, and the cultural footprint of this league than any player in its 30-year history, was not on it. Not on it. Caitlin Clark was not on the WNBA's 30-year commemorative poster. And here is what makes this specific detail so absolutely devastating. Sophie Cunningham, who was on the poster, immediately and publicly questioned why she was included. She said it plainly on her podcast. She asked why they would ever put her on it when Caitlin Clark is not there. She said that should be Caitlin, that should be Kelsey Mitchell, that should be Aaliyah Boston. She called out the absurdity of her own inclusion while the league's biggest star was erased from the frame. Think about what kind of character that takes. Sophie Cunningham is being honored on a commemorative poster, and her first instinct is to go on her podcast and say this is wrong. She is not letting them use her as a pawn. She is not quietly accepting the marketing boost. She is calling out the clown show in real time even when she is one of its beneficiaries. That is integrity. That is the kind of honesty that the people who run this league are completely incapable of. And Sophie went even further. She raised the question that nobody in the establishment media will touch with a 10-foot pole. She suggested, carefully, diplomatically, but unmistakably, that it is almost as if Kathy Engelbert is jealous of Caitlin Clark, or at minimum that Engelbert is so threatened by the size of Clark's platform, so uncomfortable with the fact that one player has become bigger than the institution itself, that she simply refuses to give Clark the promotional platform she has earned and deserves. That is a staggering accusation, and it is coming from inside the building. Now I want to escalate this, because what Sophie Cunningham is describing is not an isolated failure. It is a pattern. A ruthless, consistent, documented pattern of institutional negligence that has followed Caitlin Clark from the moment she was drafted. Let us go back to the beginning. Before Caitlin Clark ever played a single WNBA minute, the targeting had already started. The jealousy, the resentment, the old guard closing ranks against the incoming wave, it was already visible. Reporting at the time surfaced players and figures around the league who were openly dismissive of Clark before she had even stepped on the court. Diana Taurasi, Lexi Brown, Cheryl Swoops, names that the source material specifically identifies, were among those who had already positioned themselves against Clark before her rookie season began, before she played a single professional game, before she had done anything to any of them except be extraordinarily talented and extraordinarily popular. That pre-arrival resentment is crucial context for everything that has happened since, because it tells you that the targeting of Caitlin Clark is not a response to anything she did on the court. It is not competitive frustration. It is not physicality that got out of hand. It is a premeditated, coordinated effort by the old guard of this league to make Caitlin Clark's experience so miserable, so physically dangerous, so institutionally hostile, that the message is clear. You do not belong here on your terms, you belong here on ours. And the WNBA's leadership, Kathy Engelbert specifically, has allowed that message to be sent game after game after game without meaningful consequence. Let us talk about the tech foul situation, because it adds another layer to this that is almost too absurd to believe. Sophie Cunningham described an incident where Caitlin Clark received a technical foul after a play where, by Sophie's own account, the opposing player did something extra and Caitlin got the tech. Sophie walked out onto the court to talk to the referee, calmly, professionally, just pointing and asking why Caitlin got one when the other player should have gotten one too. And the referee's response was to tell Sophie not to point at her. That is the officiating culture of this league in a single anecdote. A player calmly approaches a referee to ask a legitimate question about a call. Why did one player get a technical when both players were involved? And the referee's response is not to engage with the question, not to explain the call, not to demonstrate any accountability whatsoever. The response is a power play. Do not point at me. Sophie Cunningham, to her enormous credit, did not say a word after that. She just pointed. And that moment, that silent, deliberate, utterly composed point, became one of the most viral moments in the history of social media sports content. Over 100 million views, the most viral meme in the world at that moment, according to Sophie herself on the podcast. 100 million people watched Sophie Cunningham point at a referee and say nothing, and they understood immediately what it meant. They understood the absurdity of the officiating. They understood the frustration. They understood that the people who are supposed to be running this game fairly are instead running it with a thumb on the scale. And here is what I want you to sit with for a second. The meme went viral not because Sophie said something explosive. It went viral because she said nothing. Because the silence was louder than any words could have been. Because every single person who saw that clip understood instinctively what Sophie was communicating, that the officiating in this league, specifically around Caitlin Clark and her teammates, is so transparently broken that the only appropriate response is a face and a point. Now here is the second receipt. Because Sophie also described what she said to the referee in that moment, and it is exactly the kind of accountability the league refuses to practice itself. She said it, right there. She walked out there and asked the referee a simple, direct, completely reasonable question. If Caitlin is going to get one, then the other player should have gotten one too. It should not have been one or the other. That is not a controversial position. That is basic officiating fairness. And the referee's response was to shut the conversation down rather than engage with it. That is the officiating culture of this league. That is what Caitlin Clark and her teammates are dealing with every single night. Referees who are more interested in protecting their own authority than in applying the rules consistently and fairly. And before anyone tries to minimize what Sophie is describing here, before anyone tries to frame this as just players complaining about calls the way players always complain about calls, I want you to think about the scale of what is being alleged. Sophie Cunningham is not complaining about one bad call in one game. She is describing a systemic pattern. A pattern where Caitlin Clark gets targeted physically, the refs do nothing, the league hands down a laughable one-game suspension, and then Cathy Engelbert disappears back into the shadows. That pattern does not happen by accident. That pattern is a policy. So let us now render the verdict. Let us talk about what all of this means, where it goes from here, and what the people running this league need to understand before they lose everything they have built. First, the Alyssa Thomas suspension is an embarrassment that will follow Cathy Engelbert for the rest of her tenure as commissioner. One game for a deliberate on-camera physical assault on the most watched player in the history of this league. Every future incident, and there will be future incidents because the precedent has now been set, will be measured against that one-game benchmark. Every player in this league now knows the price of targeting Caitlin Clark, and that price is essentially nothing. Second, the 30-year poster situation is not a minor marketing oversight. It is a declaration of institutional priorities. The WNBA, under Cathy Engelbert's leadership, has chosen, deliberately chosen, to minimize Caitlin Clark's presence in its own promotional materials, while simultaneously riding the wave of attention and revenue that Clark's presence has generated. That is not a mistake. That is a strategy, and it is the most self-defeating strategy in the history of professional sports marketing. Think about what this league looked like before Caitlin Clark arrived. Think about the attendance numbers, the television ratings, the cultural footprint. Think about how many people in this country could not name a single WNBA player before Clark's rookie season. And now think about what the league has done with that gift. They have allowed her to be physically targeted. They have given her a one-game suspension as protection. They have left her off commemorative posters. They have put her in commercials that do not reflect the actual scale of her impact. They have, in the words of Sophie Cunningham, dropped the ball on the golden goose. Third, Cathy Engelbert's job security should be a live conversation right now. Sophie Cunningham called her out by name. The social media response has been overwhelming. The institutional failures are documented and undeniable. A commissioner who cannot protect her most valuable player, who cannot market her most marketable asset, who cannot even show up publicly to address a situation that has the entire sports world talking. That commissioner is not doing her job, and the people who have the power to make a change need to be asking whether Cathy Engelbert is the right person to lead this league into the era that Caitlin Clark has opened up. Now let me tell you about the most revealing part of Sophie Cunningham's podcast appearance. The part that nobody in the establishment media is going to focus on, because it is too uncomfortable and too damning. Sophie went out of her way to note that the WNBA's marketing failures are not limited to Caitlin Clark specifically. She pointed out that the league consistently fails to put the right people in the right promotional positions. She noted that even in their commercial strategy, they are not putting out the players that people actually want to see, the players who are going to bring attention and eyeballs and revenue. They just do not. And she said she genuinely does not understand what the people running this league are thinking when they make these decisions. That is a current active WNBA player, a player who is herself on a commemorative poster, saying publicly that she does not understand the decision-making of the people running her league. That is a stunning indictment. Not because Sophie is being disloyal, but because she is being honest. Because she is doing the thing that the people in positions of power in this league are completely incapable of doing. Looking at the situation clearly and calling it what it is. And what it is this. The WNBA has had the greatest opportunity in its 30-year history handed to them on a silver platter, in the form of Caitlin Clark, and they have fumbled it at every single turn. They have allowed her to be targeted physically. They have failed to punish the targeting meaningfully. They have erased her from their own promotional materials. They have allowed a culture of institutional jealousy and old guard resentment to fester and grow, instead of confronting it directly. And now they are getting called out for it. Not by fans, not by pundits, not by the sports media establishment, but by one of their own players, on her own platform, with her own voice and her own credibility. And here is the clip that nobody on television will play for you, because of what it reveals about the depth of the institutional contempt for Caitlin Clark's rightful place in this league's story. Let me say that back to you so you do not miss it. Sophie Cunningham, a player who was put on the WNBA's own 30-year commemorative poster, said on her podcast that it is almost as if the commissioner of this league is jealous of Caitlin Clark. That because Clark is a bigger face than anyone the WNBA has ever had, Engelbert will not give her the platform. And Sophie called it what it is. Weird, bizarre, a joke. A joke. That is a current WNBA player calling the commissioner's treatment of the league's biggest star a joke. with her name attached to it. On a recorded podcast, that is the receipt, that is the accusation, and it is coming from inside the building. Think about the courage it takes to say that. Sophie Cunningham is not a retired player with nothing to lose. She is an active, competing professional in the league whose commissioner she just publicly called out. She put her name on that accusation. She did not hedge it, she did not walk it back, she did not dress it up in diplomatic language. She said it plainly and she let it stand. That is what accountability looks like. That is the standard the people running this league should be held to and consistently refuse to meet. Let me now make the predictions. Because this situation is not going to stay where it is. It is going to escalate, and I want to be on record about where it goes. Prediction 1. Cathy Engelbert is going to be forced to make a public statement about the Alyssa Thomas incident and the broader question of Caitlin Clark's physical safety. The social media pressure is already overwhelming. Sophie Cunningham's podcast comments are going to circulate. The one-game suspension is going to continue to be mocked and criticized by players, fans, and media alike. Engelbert cannot stay silent indefinitely, and when she does speak, whatever she says is going to be measured against what Sophie Cunningham said on that podcast, and it is going to come up short. Prediction 2. The targeting of Caitlin Clark is not going to stop until the punishment for targeting her becomes genuinely prohibitive. 1 game is not prohibitive. 5 to 7 games, the minimum Sophie Cunningham called for, is the floor of what would actually change behavior. Until the WNBA is willing to hand down suspensions at that level, the calculation for opposing players remains the same. The cost of targeting Clark is essentially zero, and as long as that is true, the targeting will continue. Prediction 3. The conversation about the WNBA's marketing failures, specifically the erasure of Caitlin Clark from promotional materials, is going to become impossible to ignore. When you have a player who is on a commemorative poster publicly questioning why Caitlin Clark is not on it, you have lost the narrative completely. The league cannot spin that, they cannot reframe it, they cannot issue a press release that makes it go away. The poster is out there. Sophie's comments are out there. The receipts are undeniable. Prediction 4. Sophie Cunningham is going to continue to be one of the most important voices in this conversation, because she has demonstrated something rare and valuable: the willingness to speak clearly and honestly about what is happening in her league, even when it is uncomfortable, even when it implicates the institution she plays for. Sophie Cunningham is not a troublemaker, she is a truth teller, and in a league that desperately needs more truth-telling and less institutional spin, that is an extraordinarily valuable thing to be. Let me close with this. Caitlin Clark is still out there, every single night, taking the hits, absorbing the targeting, playing through the physical abuse that the officiating structure of this league refuses to police and the commissioner refuses to address. She is still out there, competing at the highest level, drawing the crowds, generating the ratings, carrying the cultural weight of an entire league on her shoulders, while the people who are supposed to protect her look the other way, and the people who are supposed to promote her leave her off the poster. And she keeps showing up, she keeps competing, she keeps being Caitlin Clark, relentless, brilliant, physically courageous, and completely unwilling to let the institutional hostility around her diminish what she is doing on that court. That is what greatness looks like under pressure. That is what it looks like when someone refuses to be broken by a system that is actively trying to break them. The WNBA did not create Caitlin Clark. Caitlin Clark is in the process of creating a new version of the WNBA, one with real audiences, real revenue, real cultural relevance, and the people running this league have a choice to make. They can get out of her way and let that transformation happen, or they can keep doing what they are doing, protecting the old guard, punishing the targeting with one-game slaps on the wrist, erasing her from commemorative posters, and pretending that Cathy Engelbert is doing her job. Sophie Cunningham has already made her choice. She is standing with Caitlin Clark. She is saying out loud what the establishment refuses to acknowledge. And every single person watching this video knows which side of this history they want to be on. Here is the forced choice question for the comments section, and I want a real answer from every single person watching this video. Do you believe Cathy Engelbert's one-game suspension for the Alyssa Thomas incident was a deliberate signal to the rest of the league that targeting Caitlin Clark carries no real cost? Or do you believe the WNBA's leadership is simply too incompetent to understand the damage they are doing? Deliberate signal or pure incompetence? Drop it in the comments right now, because that answer tells you everything about what the solution to this problem actually looks like. If this video made you feel something, if Sophie Cunningham's words hit you the way they hit us, hit that like button right now, subscribe to Rim Run if you are not already here, and ring that notification bell so you do not miss a single video. We are not done with this story. Not even close. We will be here every time the establishment tries to bury the truth about what is happening to Caitlin Clark in this league. This is Rim Run. We will see you on the next one.